with the depletion of energy. Really, it's a lot of things, a lot of mechanisms that we talked about. But whatever kind of infection, but also cancer. If somebody has cancer, and uh, even for MS and these other autoimmune diseases, what they're finding is these thermal therapies are beneficial. Hey, Ashley, can we make sure our kids are good? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me get.
Understand bacterial infection, it's a different. um, when you have a cancer, it's a cells, human cells, but it's a little bit, overgrow and stuff. And if you're
Mutation
gonna
of
do
some sort.
that, it's gonna be metastase all over your body. So that's a, I don't know where you found it. I don't know. I saw in the internet.
Yeah.
That's a wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I can tell you where I found it, and I have referenced everything where I have found. But so there are certain cancers, like some lymphomas, which are in the blood, which can be more metastatic after you're circulating that. But what actually is happening, the beneficial effects of increasing heat shock proteins and increasing metabolism, and you're increasing the ability and sensitivity of the white blood cells and all the mechanisms towards that cancer. And so clinically, it has a favorable effect in all the studies that I've ever seen on the topic. And welcome to entertain different ones, but every single one has a favorable mechanism effect towards any kind of mutagenic disease or mutation or an infection. So I'd be happy to see. Yeah.
If you have a cancer, you can treat with herbs, and they're very helpful.
Yeah.
But you do not put in the hot condition. It's gonna be worse.
So actually, I am a licensed massage therapist in the state of Maine and Michigan, and definitely you don't want to massage a tumor. That's a contradiction. But cancer in and of itself is not a contradiction for massage. So to answer that specific question, definitely you don't want to massage right on the tumor, but for the rest of the body, it's found to be beneficial. So I think maybe, yeah.
When you're massaging, it's the same as you doing thermal. So when you massage, it's increase temperature and vasodilation and stuff. But when you do thermal hot temperature, it's the same way, and it's increased. And when it's vessel dilated, it goes through the vessels. It's go metastase all over the body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that I saw a lot of things. It's wrong. It's a depopulation. This is you don't do that.
Yeah, well, that's good to know, and I'm happy to dialogue on that more. But I'm just saying, I'm speaking from the literature. The literature is pointing out from a lot of these longevity studies, and this is a huge budding field right now, where people, from a false perspective or from a not really the right perspective, are wanting to live forever. There's a huge amount of money that's being put towards longevity and trying to crack the code of longevity. And this is one of the biggest things that they're finding from a non-invasive approach for cancer itself, trying to stimulate these proteins. So as I've mentioned, a lot of these different clinics are coming back to how can we implement thermal therapy for neurodegenerative diseases or cancer, or so a lot of these mechanisms. Yeah. Yes, Ashley, I can repeat it.
It's my understanding that cancer cells or mutated cells are weaker cells, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. So that's one of the reasons that this would be effective with like a cancer, is that those are weaker cells, they're mutated. So the heat is going to have a better, a stronger effect on those than your healthy cells. Right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you. We brought that out earlier. Thank you for reminding me of that. So whenever we go away from God's plan or God's genetic sequence or his pathway, how he designed it, we become weaker. And so cancer is a mutation. It's changing the pathway or how it was originally designed. So it doesn't get better, it becomes weaker. And so cancer especially is thermally weak. I'm not trying to say that that's a walk in the park. No, it can be very serious. It's a very serious condition. But just like most mutations and other pathogenic things, they're actually weaker compared to ourselves. Now, there's some things that are stronger, like MRSA, and have developed antibiotic resistance and stuff, but there still are weaker thermally than healthy things. So I hope I just let the literature speak for itself, and I'm happy to dialogue on any study, but I'd like to speak from a study or a clinical study standpoint. Yeah, so that's that. So what we have here is, so whether maybe you don't have to use it for cancer, but I'll tell you, this is what we do in all the lifestyle centers, and not just Adventist lifestyle centers, but there's a lot of lifestyle centers that make a lot of money for doing this with cancers and other things. So oftentimes things that are done at a large scale, not all the time, they have some degree of efficacy. So, yes.
I used to work at Poland Spring Health Institute, and we used to do the fever therapy baths for people with cancer. I can't say me in particular, anybody I worked with was totally cured from it, but definitely gave them longevity and gave them relief from a lot of their symptoms. But I know that they did have some people that, I don't know that it was just that cured them or that they got better from, but
Yeah.
it definitely assisted in that process of
Sure.
people that did recover.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that there's one solution. It's definitely a multifactorial approach. And if you are ever having we want to do a variety of things to aid in health. That's from a nutritional standpoint, from exercise, physical. You want to do all the things that you can. But this is just one tool that happens to actually be Ellen White, who's really foremost in this field, really encourages hydrotherapy, and she says it's probably one of the most underused and understood things that we have. So definitely something that we want to do. It's a multifactorial approach, and we want to use everything we can. But this is as we've seen from what we've just read today, there's a lot of mechanisms that are being stimulated here. So I was going to say something else there, but I forgot. But we're going to pretend this is our bathtub cut in half. And we want to make sure we have everything that we need before we even start. And I actually forgot a lot of what we need. So we're going to have, just to pretend. So we're going to want a thermometer in the tub itself so that we can monitor the temperature of the water. And we'll go into detail of that as well. So that's our ducky thermometer. You're going to want to have an oral thermometer. This is a highly technical thermometer. It works. It'll change to red if it gets too hot. So hopefully it doesn't change to red. And we're going to want hand towels and a basin of cold water. So let's just pretend both have ice water. That's all we need for this. So both of these have ice and more ice water. And these are our cooling towels. And we'll see how those are used. That's that. And we're going to want a cup of water with a straw, preferably. We'll have this, and our straw is in here. And AJ and I are going to share this water. You may see us both drinking out of it, but it's okay. We're brothers. What else do we need? We're going to want to make sure we have towels sufficient for drying him off, and a nice blanket or a large towel to cover him as we transport him or take him to wherever he's going to go, a bed or a massage table, or just where he can finish and rest and finish the treatment, because resting is a huge part of it, just allowing these mechanisms to continue. So it's a very simple treatment, but it's as we've seen, a lot of thermal energy is going to be going into his body, really upticking metabolism. So there's things that we have to watch out for. Just like in exercise, if somebody's got other cardiovascular issues or something, so if somebody is already weak and they're very low blood pressure and just not very vital force, I don't know, then that would be something to watch out, because it's like, would you have that person go do intense exercise? Probably not. So, but it's not a complete total contraindication, cardiovascular disease and these other things, as we've seen. And I pointed out in my previous hydrotherapy presentation that a lot of these cardiovascular issues are benefited with hydrotherapy if they are clinically stable. That's a big part if they're stable. But I would exercise caution and work within your scope of practice per se, what you're knowledgeable on and comfortable with. So, but by and large, this is a very safe treatment. So we want to heat up the water, already have it warmed up, and different places will tell you different degrees, but ultimately it's going to come back to your patient, what they can tolerate. And oftentimes these aren't done in isolation, so you'll get a pattern, you'll get a rhythm, you'll know what they can do. But I would say don't start out with anything over 110 degrees. If you can have your water at around 100 and anywhere from 6 to 10, that's fine. Maybe even at the first time, go lower, because you will become heat adapted. And by that meaning, like you'll start to sweat at a lower temperature. So sweating is a good thing. Sweating is how you get rid of thermal energy, cool yourself off. That's a heat adaptation. You'll have a number of other adaptations that'll happen too. Yeah.
Again, when we were at Poland Spring, I had given these fever baths to multiple people multiple times.
Oh, I know what I was gonna
And my husband decided one day that I should experience it myself.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I actually had a cold or fever, flu or something myself. So he had me do it. And I don't remember, he might remember what temperature he started me at. 110. It was intense. Of course, I was already sick on top of that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
Yeah.
I would
So
definitely.
on the first one,
Not any
you can-
hotter than that.
and you can always, depending on your hot water capacity, you have on-demand heat, you can also bring it up. Always bring it up. Actually, the studies, I was reading a study where it's actually you get a better benefit if you start low and you gradually increase the temperature. It also takes more time, but there's a better benefit. Maybe just because they're becoming acclimated, or it may be that's just longer time for all those mechanisms to be stimulated. Which one? I don't know. And I did want to say something as far as cancer. I don't necessarily like to base facts on anecdotal evidence, but I have actually myself working at Wildwood and Uchee Pines and overseas, have worked with many people that had very severe, even one condition that I can think of right now, stage 4 cancer, which is the last stage, which he was, all of his levels of cancer went away completely after that. And one of the main treatment we were doing, along with herbs and diet, was the hyperthermia bath. So it didn't cause metastasis everywhere, and I've never actually encountered that, and it's not in the literature or in any of my conversations. So I haven't actually seen that, but I do know with certain lymphomas that there are certain cancers that you might want to be cautious of, and also any open wounds or any cancers that are open. However, that's just my contraindication, but there are doing studies where they're actually injecting tumors with hot substances, not always water. And I would never recommend that just because I don't know much about it, like not qualified to do that or anything. But that is being done, and it's also being done to isolate a tumor completely and subject it to heat itself. So that's the thermotoxic environment. So there's a lot of things that are being done here. Again, there's not much money in just heat. So, yeah. So we want to we want to increase the water temperature, and we want to make sure we have all that we need before we even get started. So we're going to have him come in, and I like to check the blood pressure to get a baseline, get his oral temperature even before we start, just so I know where he's at. So, and it's, sublingual. We'll make it this side. Sublingual, right underneath the tongue. And we want to check that temperature. And I like to check it a number of times because these digital thermometers often will give you different readings. All right. So, and then I take that and get an average. And if I know a thermometer that's all over the place, just get rid of it. And I also like a mercury or a fluid-filled thermometer because that's going to be consistent with itself every time. But it does take longer. So if you can compare it to there's a name for those thermometers, mercury or fluid-filled. So check a baseline, and I'll have a piece of paper where I'll write heart rate, blood pressure. I'll write all these levels, temperature, water temperature. And so we will explain why that's important later in a very clinical way. And we write all those down so that we know where he's going. So we want to have him go in the water. My bedside skills are going to be very bad for this right now, just because my mind's in other things. All right, how's that? And so, okay, so he's in the water. It's really key that he's in the water completely, except for his head, because you just put your knee out of the water, ooh, you can lose a lot of heat that way, and it'll be a temptation at times. And if you have to do it, you have to do it. But it's a lot of heat being relieved. Yeah, absolutely. And which is frequently the case, is sometimes your standard tub might be too small, like especially for someone like Seth, who's like 6'4" or 6'8", I don't know. A normal tub's not going to be his size. So what you can do to help that is just put a towel over him, and then you can pour water. Just take the hot water and pour it over him. So now that he's keeping his skin warm, he's keeping the body warm. Typically, when I do this treatment too, I've only done them on males. They'll have shorts on usually, and if it was a female, whatever they're comfortable with, maybe a shirt on, you can do it that way too. But just take the water and spread it over them, and then you can gradually increase the temperature, or just keep it right there. For the first one, take everything slow. He's adapting. Things are happening. So put him in there, and I like to check his vitals. And what I mean by that, his heart rate, his temperature, the water temperature, his oxygen saturation with a pulse oximeter. And I like to write those down. I like to take them every 10 minutes. Yeah.
I've heard stories about using wool blankets over top in the
Sure.
water.
Yep.
Does it matter what you use?
Wool's
there a
going to
difference?
be better. Wool has a
Okay.
higher insulation value.
Wool keeps 80% of the heat when it's saturated.
Yeah. So wool keeps you warm even when you're wet. That's why it's really good to even have wool clothes and wool in your survival gear. So we could say this is a wool blanket, but the idea is you use what you have. We don't have a wool blanket right now. So a pulse oximeter is a good thing to have when you do this as well. The reason why we want to measure his oxygen content, or if that's starting to go down, then that can be a serious situation. We want his oxygen levels to be good. But if that value is going down, that can be due to a number of factors, whether he's hyperventilating or not doing a complete exhalation. And that can be fixed by just helping them, coaching them through breathing. So, and actually, if he is not exhaling all the CO2, then he has more CO2 that's being built up in his body, which is going to switch the buffering cycle, pH buffering cycle, to more acidic, which is actually going to cause him to panic and to even take shallower breaths, or shallower and more rapid breaths, like hyperventilating, and further cause him to go into that more acidic acidosis state. So if we do see that, the first thing that we're going to want to do is coach him through breathing. I've never had to do this, by the way, okay? So it's not common. It's not like, don't be scared, all right? But you would maybe, just like if someone's hyperventilating, you could rebreathe in that CO2. Just like if someone's having a panic attack, they breathe into a paper bag. So that'd be something to have on hand. Again, I don't even know anybody that's done this, but this is concept. That's the idea. This will help switch back that effect. And if that helps the oxygen levels to go up, that's great. If not, we want to just pump the brakes and slow down. Also, another thing we want to be checking for is his heart rate. Why do we want to check that? Because we don't want his heart rate to go crazy. We want it to stay every patient's a little different, and what their normal and baseline is and what they're accustomed to, and whether they're an athlete or not, their VO2 max is going to be very different. But we want to make sure their heart rate stays probably lower than 140, especially if it's this person that has a serious condition. So if that heart rate starts to elevate, what I like to have on hand is ice, and probably a larger towel than this. And I just wrap that in. I just wrap some ice in this. So like, pretend this is the ice, and you have like a ball, and you just do something like this. And they make ice bags for this that they probably use at Poland Springs, but pretend that's full of ice. And if the person's heart rate was getting very high and they were feeling uncomfortable, I would just take that ice and put it over the heart. And I could even start turning on the cold water, meaning the spigot's over here. And that lowers the temperature, the heart rate very quickly. Oftentimes you can lower it, and then once they're stable again, then you can continue with the treatment. But whatever you're comfortable with and whatever your skill level is as far as the treatment and experience. So, but again, that's not very common. And if you ever have any concerns, you can just halt immediately. Yes, sir.
One of the things to cool the head down, keep it cool, is to have a saturated small towel that's saturated in ice water and wrap it around their carotid arteries on either side of their neck.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to cool much faster than just cooling the head to cool those carotid arteries.
Yeah, there's a big arteries, a lot of blood pumping through there, and that blood ultimately is going to go throughout the whole body. So if you can cool that down, it's going to cool down the rest of the body too. So that's definitely what we do. But right at the onset of the treatment, usually they don't need cool to the head. Some people do. Some people, as soon as they get in, oh, I'm hot, I'm too hot. So this is going to help them to be able to last longer in the treatment. So the more comfortable you can keep this head, the more benefit, the longer they're going to last, and the more benefit they're going to have. So what Seth was saying, saturate that with some ice water. You tuck that right under the neck here. Oftentimes the water level is right up there. So, but if it really is a problem, you can lower that water level, and so that will stay cool. So usually right at the beginning, you don't necessarily need cool to the head, but sometimes you do. But let's say we're further in. I want to be really babying this and keep that cool. And I just take it and continue wiping his head, wiping the sweat off. Yeah, that's very important. Why? Because neuronocytes are sensitive to hyperthermia. We don't want, and we want to make sure every 10 minutes we want to be checking that. Is this the side that I said is the mouth side?
Yeah.
I think so. We want to be checking that oral temperature, because why? When do neuronocytes begin to die? 106. Yeah, 106 and higher. And so, but we can get the body, what we're looking for, the fever state is technically like 102. So right under the tongue, we want to get an oral temperature of 102. That's what we're shooting for. I mean, there's a lot of these lifestyle centers that have more sophisticated technology, like a heckler machine or something else. They're bringing it right up to 106 degrees. They're bringing the oral body temperature up to, but they're also monitoring like intracranial temperature. So they can do that. I can't do it. We can't do that. So we just keep it safe and stay 102, 104. I just stay 102, we take that and we're at 100. Great. We're climbing. We want to see progression. If we're not climbing in those 10-minute periods, we want to maybe increase the temperature of the water a little bit. Always talking to our patient the entire time, or your guest or whoever you're working with. And you're going to have your ducky thermometer. It's important that it's a duck on top, because it'll quack if it gets too hot. So you have it, and the duck's not quacking, and the temperature's not elevating. So we're going to add some more hot water. Another thing, while I'm thinking of it, that hot water, we want to make sure that another contraindication or something to be aware of, it's not a complete contraindication, is anybody with neuropathy, like diabetic neuropathy or just neuropathy, and that's just deadening of the nerves. And that's a whole nother talk. But anyway, that deadening of the nerves decreases your ability to be able to sense what temperature it is. So you're not going to be able to say if it's too hot or if you feel too hot. But really, in this case, the whole body, you've got other areas where the nerves are functioning. But still, it's something to be aware of. And you can use your own elbow and other body part, or just objectively the temperature, and don't bring it anywhere above 110. Yep. And also, anybody with any kind of vascular condition, anybody with real severe stenosis, or, what is the condition I'm thinking of? Any vascular condition, because their ability to thermoregulate and cool the tissue, how we cool our tissue is through the blood. And elephants, you'll think when they're hot, they fan out their big ears, and those capillaries in the ears dilate, and all that heat will go into the air. That's how they take the heat, the blood from the core, shunt it to their ears, and cool it down. Well, if you have decreased vascular compliance to a clinical disease state, well, the capillaries in your toes can't dilate to decrease the temperature of the toe. You know what I mean? So they can't take that. So that toe is going to get much hotter than the rest of the body if there's any kind of vascular disease there. So just something to be aware of, especially in a hot and cold contrast setting. So just saying these things, and definitely any questions asked. So we're going through, we do our oxygen saturation. That's good. And we're also drinking water. Yep. And it's very important. And this actually, I'm serious by this, but you to take care of yourself while you're taking care of somebody. Because often that happens. Like you're just so engrossed or involved with the patient, you forget to drink water yourself. How's a straw? Typically, you don't share with the patient, but to each his own. And a lot of you have done this to some extent or another, so you can chime in as well. And I would just continue this. And I'm the ideal. Well, I have done for somebody like I've done many hyperthermia treatments for people with cancer for 3 hours, even if they are able to sustain it and they're able to do it. I've done that. Not very many people can, and that's actually the one who had stage 4, and he regressed. All his cancer markers went away. I think there was some spiritual healing there too that affected. So, but anyway, you've got to really work with your patient. But what we're shooting for is 102 for 20 minutes is what a lot of the textbooks and literature is saying. Actually, even these thermic events, these treatments, even sauna exposure, what most of them are saying is just 20 minutes in a 165-degree sauna, 20 minutes in. So 20 is a magic number for a lot of these things. So 20 minutes with 102, not the whole treatment is 20 minutes, but 20 minutes with an oral temperature of 102. So that's what we're shooting for. So it's going to take some time to get up there. Morgan.
I'm sure you've heard of Barbara O'Neill.
Yep.
I don't know if you ever saw her video on poultices with
Yeah.
cayenne pepper.
Yeah.
And she talked about a man who had basically his fingers had turned black.
Yep.
And she used cayenne pepper to bring the blood flow back to there because of the heat, to agitate that. Do you think that would work here as well? Heating up that area to be able to agitate the blood flow?
Oh, yeah. Using cayenne as actually heat up. I don't think it's going to heat up to that extent. I can't speak from the literature on this, but I don't think it's heating up to the extent where it's instigating heat shock proteins from a thermal perspective. But I do know that cayenne is a vasodilator. It can dilate and it can also coagulate open wounds.
Let me rephrase my question. Would this be able to agitate that blood flow that the cayenne pepper
absolutely,
did as well?
yeah.
Okay.
Actually, if you've got hypertension or a vascular disease, you can, if it's pretty severe, you want to do it incrementally because they can't adapt well enough to cool down. So you want to do it incrementally. If it's very severe, then they can't cool that tissue down. But a warm bath is probably the single best thing you can do for immediate effect for a hypertension.
Okay.
It's going to have an immediate effect, and then it's going to have a clinical effect. Actually, quick story. I had a patient that I was in, it's Uchee Pines actually. He had his blood pressure just dropped like a lot. It was just like 40, and that was the systolic. It was a, whoa, and it was while he was eating and stuff. So I quickly said to Ashwin Sukumaran, a friend of mine, and he to go get some ice. And he ran and got some ice water, put his feet in ice water. Oh, and he was kind of out of it. He neurologic, like he wasn't talking cohesive sentences and stuff, and kind of fainted. And obviously that's real low. And he had a low blood pressure to begin with, very low. But anyway, put his feet in ice water. It was really neat to see. His neurologic ability came back. His sentence became cohesive. And so if you do have that, or somebody with hypertension, like they just went through an event where it's an emergent situation, you can put their feet in hot water as long as you're thinking of all the other things that could happen too. But if you've got a clinical event where it's just high blood pressure and you need to get that down, put the feet in hot water. That's going to dilate those blood vessels and reduce the pressure. Well, this is a great exercise to do for hypertension because you're doing vascular gymnastics to every single blood vessel, and you're stretching that muscle as well as the nitric oxide, which is the most powerful endogenous chemical that we have to lower blood pressure. So here we are working so many mechanisms, and we checking his. I even check their blood pressure while they're in here, more for my own sake. But it's not really, checking that blood pressure, checking the oral temperature, checking water. What else? Sydney has done several of these. What else do we want to look for and watch for as we're doing this hyperthermia treatment? Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So I'll just go through, and then so we've done that. We've sustained a temperature for 102 for 20 minutes. we've got there, or we want to go longer, whatever. If he's got loads of energy and he's ready to go and it's therapeutically advised, then we can continue. But I will tell you, this is very exhausting, and I would recommend anybody who's going to do this to do it themselves. But and this is to get it to that extreme. You can do this on your own with no problem. Just don't go to that extreme. I would say if you're going to do a really extreme treatment, extreme meaning prolonged and high heat, you might be a good idea to have somebody with you or around, because you could faint, and you're in water, so you're in a possible drowning situation, not a place where you want to faint in. So it's nice to have somebody around you. But you can take a nice warm bath on your own. And before we were off grid completely, I used to do that every day. Yeah, Sydney.
I was just thinking, maybe you mentioned it, but I didn't notice. But I found that prayer
Well,
has been
yeah.
an essential part of like these treatments. So starting with prayer, but also praying throughout the treatment, because
Yep.
it is very intense for the person that for the person that is undergoing it. And it can be a great distress.
Yeah.
And so to be able to pray with them and for them really helps to encourage that they can continue to.
Yeah,
do
I think
treatment.
that's very, and before all treatments, I like to pray, to begin with prayer, because, we have these tools that God has given us. And Ellen White actually says that in the end times, God's not going to be working. I have this quote in a different presentation. God's not going to be working as he did in the past through divine miracles, although he can, but he's not of miraculous intervention, healing, like the blind, now he's seeing, although he can, and he may. But he's working specifically in these end times through his natural means, so that it's no confusion that it's, because the Satan's doing that as well. Satan has the power to put on disease and to take away disease that he has put on. So in these last times, he's working through his natural remedies, and that's no less of a miracle. It's still a miracle. So we're working with his natural principles, with his mechanisms that he's instilled to be able to recover it. And God's still doing the healing. So we want to pray for that and invite the Holy Spirit to do that, because he's the one that actually activates all these mechanisms through, as we work in collaboration with him. So we're checking temperature every 10 minutes, checking pulse, checking oxygen. And the pulse oximeters do both for you, which is really nice. Check the oxygen levels and the pulse. We're checking the water temperature every 10 minutes, and we're documenting that. And it's actually really helpful for charting purposes to be able to document everything. And then you can put it on a chart, and you can see from a graph, or you just look back on your chart, see, are we becoming more heat adapted, or how soon are we getting to fever temperature, or how long are we sustaining? So you have a record so that you can get back, these past 7 treatments were solid, or we haven't even been getting to fever state yet. So keeping a record is very beneficial, not just keeping it, I think that happened back then.
Sydney made a record
Yeah.
that we're using in our office, and Jackie can bring copies of that.
Sure. Yeah, I have a nice one too, a graph where, and then after a treatment, you can mark out your dots, and you can easily see as you're going. Yeah, variety of ways, but the idea is to document, and very helpful as you continue doing treatments, because that'll alert you when something's wrong, because this is not normal. And recently I know somebody, and many of you know him, that was very helpful to have that documentation, because they were able to see, all right, something's not right, and it's not necessarily caused to this because we had previous understanding, but that was helpful, that was able to be resolved, cleared up because of that documentation. So here we are. We usually want to end our hydrotherapy treatments on cold for a variety of reasons. But here we're going to do that, and I'll briefly say that why. What I would do is I would start turning on the cold water, and depending on how fast it drains, unplug it. So cold water is coming in, and it's being drained to an extent, and I'll take these. If I have access to more ice, I will use both of these, and I will, depending on his ability and his, ability to respond and whatever, I will pour the cold right on him to get that contraction of blood vessels, so that when he stands up, he doesn't have orthostatic hypotension, where ortho means to stand, and then hypotension, lower blood pressure, and then he can faint. So we want to constrict all those blood vessels, because right now the blood's all in the dermis. It's not like there's no blood in the brain, but it's predominantly in the dermis, and we want to constrict that so it can raise his blood pressure to an extent, and also when he stands up, it's not going to drop too low where he faints again. But also, okay, I thought you had your hand up. So after I've done that, cooled him off, I will even usually dry him off while he's still in here, and he's kind of, relaxing and recovering and tired and stuff. So I'll dry him off, like that, pat him dry. And the whole time I've been keeping his head nice and cool. And to the degree to which you keep his head cool and you keep him hydrated is the degree to which he's going to last in the treatment, meaning it's going to be a longer treatment, not that survival. Although to an extent, yes. So I dry him off in there. And then the whole time, I'm going to really be careful with where he is, because I've had people faint when they get up, because you stand up, your blood pressure doesn't quite catch up, kind of like a giraffe. Never mind, that's a different topic. But yeah, that blood pressure is going to reduce. So I'll even help him up, and different people have different physical abilities. He probably wouldn't need any help, but I'm still going to be here around, and I'll put this towel around him. Somebody that is weak or older or has a really serious condition, I'd have my hand on him the whole time. But you want to get him nice and warm. You don't want him to get chilled. Maybe more towels and another blanket, and then we'd take him to the wherever he's going to rest after that. Now, I got you. And then you can do two things from here. Some people like to shower. That's fine. You can take a nice quick shower and then go to relax, or you can just go straight to your bed and or wherever you're going to rest. Some people like to because you've been sweating a lot, so you've got all that material, but you're going to continue to sweat and the treatment is still happening. So I just like to shower after, but you can shower and then shower after you rest too. So yeah.
If that bathtub was a jacuzzi, which they have, I have one at the home. Is that beneficial to lay in hot water and have that jacuzzi?
Yep.
As hot as you can, or have things in the water.
Okay.
Therapeutic things.
Okay, so a jacuzzi and maybe some additives in the water, or some Epsom salts or something, right? Maybe what you're thinking of, yeah. So jacuzzi is great. They're phenomenal. They're great, good for the vasculature. However, the only problem with them is they're not hot enough. It's on a spectrum, so you are going to stimulate heat shock proteins, but not to the extent that you would if you can get it hotter. So a lot of the infrared saunas, I'll talk about that, don't get hot enough. I mean, they're going to stimulate heat shock proteins and all that, especially depending on how heat adapted you are. But really, we want something where we can elevate the water temperature even hotter as the patient becomes heat adapted, because we want to get the internal temperature elevated, or measuring from a oral thermometer. And actually, most of these thermal studies are being measured with a rectal thermometer, which is a lot better, and it's actually measuring internal temperature a lot better. We're doing it here. A lot of things can affect it, but so it's pretty accurate. So jacuzzis are great. If you have one, you can use it, definitely. But from a treatment standpoint, you really want something that can get hotter. And so I said infrared saunas often don't get hot enough. There's other, like the Finnish saunas are like from a wood heat or electronic heating of rocks and pour water on them. But the infrared doesn't seem to get hot enough, except with the heckler. It's a little different. Yeah, Sydney.
My other concern with the jacuzzi would also be the chemicals that's in the water for cleaning. So that, for me is a concern with the bath water, especially if you're in a well. It's nice pure water, and we don't have to worry about.
And you drain it every time.
And you can drain it every time.
Yeah. Also, you asked about like Epsom salts. Epsom salts are a great thing. From my understanding, the best part about them is they create a high electrolyte environment. So wherever electrolytes are, water wants to go. So that actually aids in cleaning out your extracellular fluid, so it's aiding in getting rid of metabolic debris through the sweat. It's pulling the fluid out, which is even more reason to drink more water. But there's other benefits of Epsom salts too. But primarily, I think the biggest one is the extracellular increase in electrolytes, which increases osmosis to an extent. I think I used that right, to pull extracellular fluid out, thereby getting rid of metabolic debris and byproducts. So after that, and then it's cleaning up the water. I think those of you who have done hyperthermia treatments, think about if I have done everything. Yes.
I'm not sure, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yep.
Eliquis is a blood thinner, so
Mm.
that's a cardiovascular.
Yeah. I'm just gearing him for
Okay.
the answer. You keep going.
Disease. Yeah. So for this treatment for my husband,
Yeah.
he's on Eliquis.
Okay.
Um,
So this treatment in and of itself is a blood thinner because it's blood is a tissue, so it's going to decrease the viscosity of it. So for me, judging from my perspective, I just say something to be aware of and approach it carefully, which we will. We'll approach it carefully and monitor symptoms and stuff. I don't know. Mazzoni, do you have anything further to say on that?
Help me understand your question first. You're talking about Eliquis. Eliquis is a blood thinner. It's a very powerful blood thinner.
Mhm.
Your husband's on that for some reason. He's got atrial fibrillation, or he has some reason why he's prone to clot. So why is he on that?
He had radiation twice.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'm gonna actually gonna pause because I think this is the more specific clinical question,
Right.
and I think maybe you two can interact
I agree.
specifically.
So I would say
I think
continue
that-
with
yeah.
yours, yeah.
I think that'd be very beneficial. And I would, from that question, let me say something more broad, and that is, hydrotherapy is going to act as a blood thinner as well, and so it's something to be aware of. It's going to decrease viscosity, and also, but to reason from cause to effect, we want to find out, as he did just now, what's the cause of that? What's going on? And is there a way that in time or immediately we can start putting something natural like drinking water? But in your case, it's a different thing. So that is maybe the best solution. So yeah. Mhm. So anything obviously you've got to do this. You have to practically do it with somebody, preferably somebody that knows, but you don't have to wait to take a hot bath. You will get the benefits of just taking a hot bath, but to do it therapeutically for an ill patient or an ill person, maybe take caution because they're already drained. They're already having something going on. This is adding to that. You can do this to a way that is productive, and you can do it to a way that's not so productive. Yeah.
Do you have a certain brand of ducky thermometer that you
Yeah,
recommend?
I do. This is actually the Aqua E.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
What I found to be the best.
Thank you very much.
And which one quacks the best?
The yellow ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. There's a lot. I was doing some more research yesterday on this topic of hydrotherapy. It's just there's so much information out there, so much on thermal therapy. It's ridiculous how much. But what's really saddening is there's so much information out there, but it's largely not being implemented except by those who are really who are wealthy usually, and they're trying to live forever. They're trying to do whatever they can take to increase their longevity and stuff. But we can do it for the right motivations to aid in the healing mechanisms to help people live longer and better so that they can get to know Jesus and serve him and serve others. So that's what we're really after. But just like there's so much beneficial information to the positive effects. And yeah. Yeah, it's going to vary by, could I repeat the temperature of the water? It's going to vary by patient to patient. Some people can take more than others. You want to always keep in mind their conditions. But I would say no hotter than 110 until you know the person. Even start lower. The studies are showing that if you can start lower and build them up, it takes longer, but actually the benefits are more, whether it's due to the gradual progression, like you can put a duck in, what is it? You can put a frog in, put a frog in boiling water and he jumps out, but you can heat up a frog and he stays in. So they seem to last longer. There's a hormetic response. We didn't talk about hormesis at all, but which seems to be effective. But yeah. slowly progressing. But I would say don't start anything above 110. 110. Definitely not above 110. Morgan.
I don't know how many people live around here, but if you're interested in like exercise and saunas and all this good stuff that you're talking about, the YMCA here in Auburn has a sauna. I like to use it. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if the women's bathroom does, but I know the men's bathroom has a sauna.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make that
That's
available.
good. Yeah. Saunas are a great thing for detoxing, sweating, all sorts of things. And I will say a lot of these studies are just using saunas that are going up to a temperature of 140, 150, which is not that hot. So you can still have many of the benefits that those finished saunas. But to really be optimal, like what's best is like 170, which is hot. Yeah. And you'll build up to that. But
And that's dry or wet?
170 is dry with a 30% humidity. 30%. Yep. Okay. Well, how about we wrap it up? And I'm happy to dialogue with other people further. But we can go ahead and pray. All right. Let's go ahead and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all that you do for us and being our Heavenly Father who cares for us and watches out for us. I pray that we will become more knowledgeable in how our bodies work so that we can better live how you've designed us to live and be able to serve those around us better and longer. I pray that you will guide us each and every day and all of our interactions, and that we'll be drawn closer to you, and that specifically that the information that has been shared here might be retained, and then not only be retained, but being able to be retrieved when appropriate. And I pray that everybody here implements in their own way something that they've learned here today, whether that's just taking longer hot showers or hot baths or other things, just to stave off conditions and diseases. In Jesus' name, amen. Mm-hmm.